Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to today's webinar presented by the Florida Apex Accelerator at FIU. And we will be discussing Government Contracting 101, presented by Mirtha Roy, who's a government contracting consultant for the Florida SBDC at FIU. And my name is Alexis Fox. I'm the Marketing and Training Manager here at the South Florida SBDC. So as you all are getting situated, please leave your name and the name of your business in the chat. You can also ask any questions that you have for the presenter or to our panelist, Mr. Luis Batista, in the Q&A section of this webinar. So make sure you have your Q&A tab open in order to ask any questions, and our presenter and panelists will be more than happy to answer those questions for you throughout the presentation. So Mirtha has an expertise in program project and contract management, federal procurement, acquisition, and compliance. Her career has spanned almost 3 decades, designing and leading country infrastructure, aviation, construction, energy, and other projects with budgets in the billions, and in public and private sectors throughout North and Central Africa and throughout the US. Mirtha has managed teams and processes dedicated to federal and general government contracting and the procurement lifecycle, including bids, proposals, contracts, contract negotiation, and government agency relations. And I'm sure she will talk more about her expertise throughout the presentation. So about Apex, the Florida Apex Accelerator is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the Department of Defense. It focuses on consulting, training, and information to help businesses small and large research and bid on government contracting. An additional priority is contracting to local businesses in government-led innovation programs. The Florida Apex Accelerator has 9 host universities, which includes 13 consultants. This also includes one-on-one consulting for no cost and training events and resources such as the webinar that you're attending today. There are many ways that the Florida Apex can help with the resources. They help with completion of registration, identifying agencies, and they also help you to determine whether you're ready for government opportunities and how to position yourself to succeed, as well as networking opportunities. And if you have any questions about this information or want to know more about the Florida Apex specifically and its resources, please feel free to use the Q&A section in the chat in order to ask those questions. Again, the Apex is a partnership organization with the South Florida SBDC. And the South Florida SBDC is a part of the U.S. Small Business Administration. We're a resource partner that provides one-on-one business consulting and trainings and information to small businesses. If you'd like more information about SBDC, I will provide a link in the chat for you to register for consultation.
Hey, Alexis, this question.
Yes.
Are we supposed to be paging through these slides?
I'm sorry?
Are we supposed to be paging through these slides? We're still on the home slide. This says Florida Apex Accelerator.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's supposed to be. Sorry. My apologies. I definitely thought it was playing this entire time. Sorry, brief technical intermission. Okay, sure. Are you able to see the slide now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So again, all of the information will be available to you. We will send the full slide presentation to you all after this webinar concludes.
You are, though, over the slides, your image.
Oh,
Yeah, but let her go through that.
I'm over the slides. That's interesting. I'm so sorry.
Because I'm gonna take over the presentation, so.
My apologies.
Hey, everybody, while she's doing that, just a little bit about Apex. Apex Accelerators, the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs. And if you haven't registered in SAM, and that's where you're going to start, you can actually log into FedCon, FEDCON 101, right? 101 at .com, and it'll walk you through the initial few steps.
Okay, so you should be able to see this is more of the information that Luis just mentioned. Thank you all so much for your patience. Again, I apologize for that. Here's some more of the Florida Apex resources. Luis and Mirtha will be able to talk to you all more in depth as we go through the presentation on these resources. Partnership with the SBDC. And here's a little bit about what the SBDC does. Again, I will leave the link in the chat for both Apex resources and SBDC resources for anybody who is interested in more information. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Mirtha to go ahead and talk to you all about Government Contracting 101.
Yeah.
There's a saying I learned when I was very young: demo and die. I used to do a lot of demos. You used to carry around a desktop and a 14-inch RGB monitor that weighed a ton, and we had to drag those inside client businesses to show our presentations.
Thank God for technology, right? And
That was before notebooks. Yeah.
good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And our learning objective today is gonna basically be like an overall session about what is government contracting, is it right for you, and the kind of steps that it takes for successful contracting, right? We're gonna give you some examples of contracting opportunities, some tips, and because business development and networking, well, Luis will help me with that a lot when it comes to the federal space, is very important. So what we're talking about is making connections with the agencies that you have researched and decides that they buy your craft, and you're gonna build relationships with these folks and the networking, right? And we'll give you also some additional resources to help your business. Well, you know, secure government contract, that's a high statement. What you think, Louis? So we would say, why government contracting, right? So government contracting, first and foremost, is not for everybody. So we know that the government has their own employees. However, these employees are trained to acquire goods and services of what the government needs. You know, there's a saying that the government buys everything. I mean, in theory, they do, because they can go to the store or go to Amazon like you and I do to get any kind of services that they need. They have to go through a procurement process, and this is what's called, you know, the contracting. So back in 2020, so they spent 1.7 trillion in local and 1.8 trillion, I guess, directly in, you know, in local government. So local government means us here in Florida. You know, that's why it's so important that we have all our contracting, all our corporate documents in order, and we are registered as a vendor in many of these municipalities so they can know of our existence. You know, that's number one. Then we'll talk about the government certification that helps certain groups. So in 2022, the government committed 694 billion on contracts. And remember, out of this 694, 23% of that amount is mandated towards small certified businesses. So that's a big thing to think about. If you know, any of you on this call that that your business qualify for certain things. So the key question, right, is who's buying your products and services? And my partner Luis is much better at the afterwards, because my main concern is to get you guys government ready. When I meet with you guys, you know, I make sure that you're government ready, and then we move into this step of looking to see if that's the right thing. So now we want to work smarter, not harder, right? So the gateway we would think about would be like, we're going to evaluate, plan, register, like I said. So we're starting with SAM registration here, because SAM registration is at the federal level, and that's the mother of all registration. However, you also have your state and local registration that we encourage you to also explore, because you have state contracts and you have local contracts. So of course, you got to prepare. So we talked about certification. Again, we're talking about the mothers of all certifications, right? Like your 8A. And 8A really is a certification that one should get after your business is firm on the ground, right? Because now with the song boots on the ground, right? You have to make sure that financially you're secure, you have a good capability statement, you have taken advantage of all the economic, I guess, what would we call them that now? I don't want to say minority, but all the programs that the government still have existing in contracting that you can get. Here we're talking about the hub zone and WOSB. And this is all stuff that we facilitate you with. And then of course you're gonna pursue the opportunities, and then achieving is winning or losing the contract, right? So now, when we say evaluate, what do you mean by that? First of all, okay. Again, when we talked about it, government contracting, is it the right path for you? In the sense that you can't go on Sundays and register your business this month, and then you come to programs like us, Apex, SBDC, all the other programs out there, and expect to get government contracts, right away, because it's not even a race. It's like a marathon. You got to be mentally prepared. You have to have the resources that it takes. And if you're running the business yourself, being that business developer and that person that is, constantly looking for opportunities, that becomes overwhelming, right? Because like I just said, it's very expensive, to do business to government contract. And there's strong competition. As you know, you're not the only one that's trying to get into the government. And most important, and I learned that a lot from Lois, and depending on the products or services that you offer. Yeah, the government buys everything, but we here in Florida, that's where you're paying your taxes to the state, to the county. And then, there are some federal contracts in Florida also, because, the contract is depending from the funding source. That's so is determined, which municipality is gonna be managing this contract or is requesting those services, right? So before you get started, we're gonna cover some key questions. So what size of contract can you handle? Again, if you're just getting into government contracting, it's gonna be very hard to evaluate this question. That's why it's important that you have developed the business to a certain capacity, that you have exchanged those services with either as a subcontractor, either as a small purchase order with a business to business thing. At least have something to determine what can you handle, because government contracting is expensive, and we'll get into the finances. So how many proposals can you really handle? Let me tell you guys, I've worked for both large 500 corporate companies, and I've worked for small companies. And when you hear of these established government contractors, like I don't know, your Bechtel, these are the people I work for, Bechtel, AECOM, and etc. They have a proposal department that's all they do. So let's say if the goal is to put 4 to 5 proposals out a week, just think about it a month. And if we get 1 or 2 awards during a quarter, that's a party. So kind of work the math in your head, even though you're not that big, but on a smaller circle. So what it takes, and then when we're talking about proposals, right? If you're doing a full-fledged RFP, which is a request for proposal, you have to worry about not only the cost, the technical, the technical portion, how you're gonna deliver these services, a schedule, a timeline, all of that. That's a full request for proposals. But you can also do something like, request for quote. When you see something called an RFQ, so that means they're giving you specifically what items do they need. And if you can fulfill these items with the specs, they're only looking for the price. So most likely those scenarios are the lowest price and the better value for the government. So how much growth are you willing to go through or can you handle? Like I said again, don't think you're gonna go into government contracting to sustain your business from the beginning, because it just doesn't happen. The government doesn't prepay you. It's not like the government will give you a grant for you to start all the expenses that are required to get a government contract. By the time you come to them, you have to be able to handle what it is that you're coming to. So now, most people that I work with, right, they're the owner and only employee, and sometimes not even on W-2. When the government's looking for employees, we're looking for W-2s, right? Not 1099 or special consultant. You can bid a special consultant on your proposal, but the whole staff, the whole people that's gonna deliver that service cannot be, so that's part of your human resources, the resources that we talk about that you need to be able to engage in government contracting. And again, if you have some products and services that you already have, and you see that maybe there's not, too much movement in that, or you're willing to research, do some market research and see if you can expand or pivot. Can you create other products or services that maybe the government or your local area is buying? So that's something under your evaluation, right? So now, what if you win the contract? I think I was kind of over my head before. Again, when you win a contract with the government, once you sign the dotted line, you are committed to this thing. So first and foremost, it could take you up to 90 days to get your first invoice, right? Processed and paid and cleared. So what does that mean? That means once you sign the dotted line and the contract has a start date of 30 days from the time you sign, you have better have resources to be able to deliver flawlessly the services that you promise on that document that you're gonna do, or the products, whatever it may be, right? Whether that, you get paid on that. So now, depending on your payment terms, that's why when I review contract documents with clients that are interested in a certain bid, make sure we go through the scope of work. Do you really feel that you can deliver what they're asking? And when you're thinking about it, is you got to show them, I understand what the need is. This is how I plan to deliver it. This is the timeline I'm going to deliver it by. You got to be able to articulate all of that, and not just us in talking, on a paper. So, so that's winning the contract, right? You have to have your resources. You have to be ready, because the one thing you don't want to happen is to win a contract and default on that contract. So we're not even gonna go there. So if you lose the contract, and you're gonna lose many contracts, right? Many bids that you put in, the likelihood that you would lose more than winning. What I recommend, especially as a small business that's trying to let that agency know, I'm really interested in you, I wanna know how to do work with you, ask for debriefing, right? So what does that mean? a lot of them in the contract documents even tell you can do the debriefing, but a lot of people don't even know that they can reach out to the contracting officer. And then when you get that, when you get that meeting with them, what you want to know is, oh God, I really was interested in this contract. How close was I? So let's say if they were evaluating 5 bids for this project. You want to know, was I midway? Was I number 2? And all of that they would discuss with you, because now it becomes a public document. Louis, please just chime in if I'm not saying the right thing.
No, you're saying the right thing. Only that you have only a few days to request that debriefing.
Thank you.
That's really mostly in the federal system. And while the FAR says you have the right to the debriefing, it doesn't say what kind of debriefing you get. So it might really just be an email response. You'll be lucky to get to talk to the person. Most CEOs will talk to you. If it's price-based, then, why bother them? It was price-based. In local government, you can do a lot more, but usually when you're responding to like RFPs, there's a lot more work involved. In local government, they'll actually select a small committee. It'll include the contracting officer, and local government, they call them buyers, and they'll pick a few people from, within the agency, and they'll review your solicitations. All that is done, recorded, totally, open to the public. And there you get a little more insight into, what the buyers and the agency is looking for. They'll often make notes that, you have rights to. But yeah, you always want to know why you lost, unless you already know.
Has been, and I know that Miami-Dade County is really good, both the county and the school board, of giving small businesses that debriefing, so that can help you strengthen, where your weakness was. They would kind of walk you through. And I know that you can also access that award, and you can compare, their proposal, to yours, the price and the responses and what have you. So the right opportunity which you can afford to win or lose, like we talked about it, do not go and bid on a government contract, because it's gonna either sustain or break your company. Logically, that makes no sense, right? So as we talked about, if it's an RFP, it takes a lot of time and resources. So the more you're getting into that project, and if you have any doubt, I mean, even if you try to reach out to some subcontractors, they're wishy-washy, and if you're not sure, you can walk away from that proposal up to the due date. You're only committed when you submit that package. And guys, remember, when you're dealing with subcontractors, the government, a lot of the bid documents will require that you let them know who the subcontractor is, because at a certain point they have to approve everything on the contract. However, they're contracting with you. If the subcontractor fails, it's your failure. And the government's not gonna wanna hear what happened was, I hired Luis Batista. No, this is your responsibility. So that's why when you partner with somebody, you gotta make sure that, this is the right fit, because it's almost like a relationship, And so is winning this contract, is it gonna build towards your business? Again, not sustain it, right? We're not gonna sustain, we're just gonna, so we're still doing evaluate. Yeah. So, okay. And the last thing is, so as we talked about before, especially in the federal space, past performance is a must. What does that mean? That means they want to see that your firm has delivered the services under some kind of contracting instrument prior to, so that's past performance. That what have that you performed before. In experience, and Louis, you can also help me with that. I know that you can, as a officer or as the president of the company, you can rely on personal experience, right? For the experience, or is it just
There's a
the
couple of things here.
industry?
There's a couple of things here. Past performance only gets reported to the federal system CPARS under certain conditions. And it varies widely. For engineering, for example, anything over $50,000 gets reported to CPARS. That's an extremely low level. For construction, it might be $700,000 before anything gets reported to CPARS. That's the official past performance scoring, and it has a lot of different sections. How fast you responded, a lot of different to come up with a new numerical calculation for you. Past performance, you can really, to the federal government, you can explain any past performance you've had either for federal, for local, for in your private sector, which was what Martha was speaking to. So there's no harm in including that, right? But it is two different things.
But what I have seen though, I have helped a client, for example, respond to a federal RFP, and they literally had, you know, part of the forms that had to be, you know, submitted with the bid documents was a past performance where you had to say the project number.
Well, yeah.
Right. So that's how, if you're going in, so there, because I remember when I sat in that chair inside the government, we used to literally, when we're considering award, right, for the top 3, we would literally check, you know, that's why they let you know, make sure the phone number is correct, the email address is correct, and blah, blah, blah. So, so that's past performance that I was talking about as far as contracting documents, you know, with an RFP. But Louis, you brought up, you know, the scoring thing. So that's like people that are registered on SAM, right? And or is it them that go in and enter the past performance, or is it automatically when you said it reached a certain dollar threshold on their company, it gets reported?
Number 2, when it reaches a certain dollar threshold. Now, here's the thing. You say, well, how do you get past performance? I'm new. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's a catch-22, right? And that's where teaming comes in. You can team with another company, and I don't know if Martha's going to cover this later, where, you know, let's say it's a service-disabled veteran small business set-aside, or it's a women-owned small business set-aside, or an 8A or a hub zone. You know, most companies might be 1 or 2 of these things, but you're certainly not going to be all of them. So that's where teaming comes in. And in that teaming arrangement, it's a private sector arrangement. The SBA does not have to vet your teaming agreement, but they don't have to accept it either. But they normally do, where they'll combine your past performance, your capabilities, your economic, social economic standing, everything as a team. And you can actually have more than 2 companies on a team. And then there's, you know, joint ventures where the government has to consider both of your past performances and everything else. But joint ventures are very different. You have to form a different company. Then beyond that, there's a mentor protege program where you can actually go under the wing of a much larger company. But before you do that, they're going to want you to have something that makes you valuable to them.
Right.
Point being, there's a lot of ways of getting around any of this.
Okay, thank you. And so geographical focus area, like we said, you know, try to focus on an area. I always tell people, think about it. If there's a federal project out in, I don't know, Colorado, I looked at something with a client the other day.
Why not Colorado?
You know, yeah, and you're in Florida, the likelihood, you know, even though it's a federal project, but it's gonna cost you definitely more, because you're gonna have to, you know, secure staff there, or probably even open an office, whatever it requires. So I'm thinking, you know, logically, you always have to kind of be logical in your business decision. So that's part of the business development. Your small business size standard. Of course, you know, most people are qualified for the small business size standard. So that's something when you register on SAM, depending on your finances, it determines that category for you. And then who do you know? Again, building that relationship and networking, you know? So again, don't think about government contracts as they will, what they will get you, right? Think about what they will cost you. You can't go into, you don't go into business losing money. That's why the most challenging that I've found with my small businesses is for them to determine the cost of doing business. Now, when I'm not an accountant, and and that's something that you guys really, really have to think about when you're doing financial planning. When you're writing that email, when you're doing research, that's your human resource, that's your time that you're putting toward that project. If you have an assistant or anybody that's assisting you, so that's part of the, let's say if you do 5 hours that day, so that's part of the cost of doing that thing. So that's, that has to go into your total cost of doing the business, is what I'm saying. Because, as business owners, we give up so much and we don't value what we do, or, yeah, but because if you were doing it for somebody else, that will have been, so you have to put a monetary value to the, that's like what is costing you to do that business. All right. So now we're gonna go into planning. So reality is you're not gonna get, again, we talk about it, a NASA contract or Department of Defense contract, right? So that's why we try to have you start small, start local. We talk about building past performance. Again, in order to get big and go to 8A and go to all those wonderful federal platforms, you have to learn to crawl before you walk, and you have to learn to walk before you run. And that's government contracting in a nutshell, right? So he talked about teaming or subcontracting. These venues are very helpful in the sense that, once you and that company deliver excellent services, and I encourage my, small businesses to try to get, something from that person, that project manager on the project, they don't offer it now. When I was doing contracting, Louis, we almost had to have it as part of our contracting documents. Like the rating of that contractor, at the end of the project, that comes from the, project management team on the government side, where they sign it and put their names and what have you. So even if they don't offer it, because what I find, a lot of the local people don't really know, like, the range of government contracting to its fullest, but these are stuff that if you even Google now, go to the FAR, and you can find out yourself. It's always good to collect, these attributes, I call them, because that's what you can give as past performance when you're bidding on your next job, and it requires, let me see what you've done on the contract and how you've done it. Like I said, we're gonna start small, and starting small could be your local municipalities. People don't even think that if your business in the city of Miami, Miami Gardens, Virginia Beach, wherever, Miami Beach, wherever they have, because they have their own contracting dollars, start attending the council meetings, because that's where they have to get permission to even advertise jobs. I remember a friend of mine had a construction company in DC, and I needed something to do, and I didn't want to get a job. So I convinced him to open a branch. But the first thing I did a lot of research in the area, and I was like very obnoxious. I didn't want more than 10 miles from my house, but whatever. So finally, North Miami was the municipality that had the most advantages for small businesses. So we went and got a little suite there, established, a company there. And my whole thing was, within 3 months, I didn't want these Washington operations to pay for my salary and pay for the resources of that business. So I started attending the council meetings, and all lucky again in government contracting, we just said who you know, right? So the guy that was over the maintenance contracts, he went to engineering school with the owner. So right there, that connection, let me tell you, it took less than 90 days for us to get established. But, you know, we had to really deliver, because, you know, when you have those kind of close type, you know, relationships, you still, you know, there's a conflict of interest, but what have you. But he did pretty well, you know, so that's to kind of show you starting small, because what I love with North Miami, they had a local preference. And when you guys are in your municipality and you're looking at bid documents, local preference is a nice thing. Why? Because it gives you 10% advantage point, meaning if your business is located in that municipality, you're being afforded the local preference. What does that mean? That means if you and I bid on the same project, right? I hope my math worked this time. And you scored an 89, I mean a 79, right? But you live in, your business is in North Miami. But I scored an 88. So at the end of the scoring, when they add the 10 points to you, you're at 89 right now. And that's what they did for small certified businesses that resided in their jurisdiction. So I love that. So studying local and small, there's merit to it. I'm sorry I gave you all a whole story, but you know, and that also helps you build the past performance that we talk about. That's going to be so important as you grow and go for bigger contracts. Like Louis said, teaming or subcontracting, this is what's going to help you build that past performance. And again, teaming or subcontracting is like a relationship. You know, I even call it as serious as engagement and marriage, right? Because you engage with this company to deliver this thing, and you both are equally responsible, and you got to make sure that there's communication. You got to make sure that, you know, each of you have the same stake in it, and, you know, and understanding the seriousness of what you guys are doing, right? So again, you know, to growing your capacity, right? So financial, human resources is super important. In operations, you have to, that's why the government asks for financial statement and financial report. They have to see that you have the financial operational resources to be able to carry this project through. You know, in your personal life, you go to this financial advisor thing, and they said, well, you got to have at least 6 months savings for emergency. So that's kind of like that when you think about it. The government wants you to have 90 to 180 days of secure resources in case, you know, things happen on the contract. Now, they will pay you. Once you deliver the services, they will pay you. But let's say that, you know, if you're late on something, there's so many things that can happen, but you still are obligated to deliver the services on the timeline that the contract requires while you're working at those clicks in the contract, right? And then, you know, that will help you work your way to larger contract. So past performance again, right? Information, you know, it's what you've done on previous contracts. It's almost like you graduate with this PhD or this master's degree. Nobody wants to hire you until you have, you know, experience. So you gotta really try to be creative, and with the way that we talked previously, for you to be able to get that past performance, right? Yeah, so procurement officials, again, they have certain guidelines, you know, especially the federal space. You have the FARs that kind of guide everything that you do. So they can go outside of those guidelines. So past performance is a big thing for them in determining awards. That means you did good on the last one, you should probably, you know, do good or better on this one. So we talked about teaming, right? It's where a group of small businesses get together on a project, and it could be 2. It doesn't have to be like 3, 4, 5, depending on the size of the project. You know, to me, you know, the smaller the collaboration, the easier. But like I said, make sure there's open communication. Make sure that everybody's got at stake. You know what's at stake. It's not just you. Everybody understand, right? So you have a pool of resources now. So for example, let's say like Louis said earlier, it's a contract for a service disabled veteran. But that service disabled veteran can subcontract you to give the technical portion of the contract, whether it's a product or service. As long as that, you know, because the contract is gonna be awarded to that service disabled firm, and they're using you as a subcontract, or they can even team with you for that matter, right? But they're gonna have to have the management of that contract. So that's kind of, you know, so there's still room. So if you know, you know, if you're looking at a opportunity that says service veteran and you happen to know service veteran guy, and you can call him and say, look, I can do this portion of it. And, you know, so that's a collaboration right there, you know, so that's just kind of, you know, pulling resources, experience, and abilities, right? Because let's say if they're asking for experience in such and such thing, your group may not have it, but the next person, you know, may. So that, you know, that's a good thing with the kind of, you know, in joint venture. Again, you know, to me, that's like for, you know, bigger projects, because you tend to do subcontracting and teaming for smaller things, you know, like Louis said, that requires you to have a whole separate legal entity, you know, and so on and so on. So I don't know if I want to spend too much time on joint ventures. I'm not sure what level of business we have on the line. So now, targeting and identify your opportunities, right? So we talked about, you know, small business set asides. What does that mean? That means the 696, was it billion or trillion that we saw earlier, that the government procurement budget for that year, 23% of that has to go to small business set asides. When you do the math, that's not a bad number, right? So then you have your socioeconomic status. So that's where your certifications come in. So there's like a slew of certifications. I like to explain certifications like at 3 levels, right? You have your local level, because remember your local government, whether it's Miami-Dade County, public schools, there are local government entities that acquire services. So they have their own certifications. And the good thing with Miami-Dade County is their certification serves all the local municipalities that are here, i.e. Jackson Hospital, So they don't have their own certifications. They have their own vendor registrations, but you would upload that Miami-Dade Small Business Enterprise certification as proof of your social economic status, right? And then, so you do the same thing with the school board because they have their own certification. Then you go to the state. Since we're in Florida, so you go and register as a vendor with the state and get your state certification. So meaning that if there's any contracting with state dollars, you know, you're interested to them then. If they have state dollars, it's a state contract, your Miami-Dade certification means nothing to them, because you know they can check that box for state certified. And it's the same thing at the federal level. Now the federal level has different types of you know, certification. You have your WOSB. Now WOSB means woman-owned small business. What does that mean? As long as you're of a woman gender, you're able to apply for this certification. However, they added, because they know that, you know, the fairness, and this program is still online right now, even though it's moved to the SBA portal, it's called the EDWOSB, economically disadvantaged woman-owned, right, business. So with that, it requires a little bit more of financial, but then that puts you in a smaller economic group. For example, sometimes some contracts are just for EDWOSB. So that's mean you don't have to be competing with all the WOSBs. You can go into that little subtitle. And then at the federal level, you know, we talked about the 8A hub zone. And then even though Miami did offers that, you have something called the DBE, which is your disadvantaged business enterprise, or the ACDBE, which is your airport concession, DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise. And these, for example, the DBE, I see that if you have any interest in Florida Department of Transportation, that's the best certification to get because that's the one that they mostly recognize. And so the difference between the DBE and the ACDBE is for products and services mostly, where the DBE, they look at it more for the construction side. And then the ACDBE also gives you access to airport concession. Now, you don't have to go be a concessionaire where you go and build out and sell something, but you can be a vendor to one of those people at the airport. And that certification also helps, you know, get you into the airports. And not just airports in Florida, airports all over the US because it's a federal certification. So, and then we talked about, you know, where you live and where your business is located. It makes sense that if you're in Florida, you don't be looking at projects in Alaska, you know, just like kind of common sense. We know we beat past experience and past performance, right? So next, like you could look at the forecast, and this is where you know, my partner here is really so good at, you know, that part. It's so important to kind of look at the forecast and also look at what that agency has bought, or they're buying your products and how much money have they spent on it. And there's all kind of Luis, is that where I share that link you sent me, or we'll do it at the end?
Well, the link is really just for SAM registration, SBA profile, and capability statements, which, you know, many would consider the foundation, although the only true requirement is your SAM registration.
Correct. But there is also a website where you can get the forecast and pass award. I know you've sent it to me in the past, but I don't have it handy.
No, what's going on here is Martha is really more an expert in SLED, state, local, educational, government, and compliance, where I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I'm more just the federal sector.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, the federal sector is so much easier because it is one system.
I know.
Martha's dealing with, you know, 35 cities and 65 counties in Florida. So it's a totally different bag of nuts.
Yeah, I know, for example, Miami-Dade County.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can go on their website and you see the awarded contracts. And so, but what I also, when I work with my clients and they're interested in something, we would look at when they, you know, the bid, the original bid, and find the name of that buyer and contact them, you know, like that, and see if we're interested in getting a forecast for your agency, if we're interested in looking at past, you know, past awards. So they usually assist you with that. Like I said, you know, the government's job is not to block you from getting government contracts. But remember, you're one company, right? And they have a zillion people coming at them. That's why I always tell people, don't go to the government and somebody has to guess what your problem is, or somebody has to guess what question. Please make sure you can articulate what you want, because they have a lot going on. And they remember, I always say, at least me, when I was in that chair, I remember the special ones. And it's like, oh my God, you know? So you don't want to be, you know, part of that list. You want to be, you know, intentional. You want to exactly know, always put as a subject, whatever that project number and project name, that should be the subject of any correspondence with them, because that's the language that they speak, right? Because you don't have them go and try to figure out what project you're discussing or what is it, you know, and I put attachment. Sometimes I'll even go in and copy what I'm asking, and you have to be very clear and intentional with them. So anyway, like the past awards and forecast will help you determine what they buy, or we're getting close, the amount and what's set aside that they thing. So again, we're gonna look for key agencies, procurement contracts and upcoming RFP workshops, like or vendor outreach. Always go to vendor outreach because that's where you get the gist of thing. So local versus state versus federal. I think we touched on that a little bit, right? Nothing is more really profitable, whether it's the state. Again, it's how you price your contract and how you manage your contract. You're in business to make money. So this is, once you know the cost of doing your business, and then, you bid that job, and, again, you're not in business just to sustain, right? It's recommended that all firms register at all levels of government. We talked about that, where I encourage all my clients, we're gonna register at all the local municipalities that we can, because if you're not registered on their system, they don't know that you exist. So, and that's why they always ask for your commodity codes or your product codes, and you have to also be familiar with that. I mean, I've been working with people that I'm still not sure of what their services or product they offer. You can't be like, I do consulting, I do IT, yeah, those things are specific. So if you can't articulate what you do, nobody's gonna be able to do that for you, right? So local government contracts. So let's go into the search for opportunities. Let's see. So again, we talked about all the municipalities. What this means, all of these folks have their own procurement power because they have procurement dollars. And it's important to go into their vendor registration and register as a vendor. And that's when you do your muscles, when you have your certifications, your state, your local, federal, whatever it may be, and you put that in there because they procure goods and services, right? So that's important. People overlook, but that's such a great resource that people don't look at. Again, all of this, right? And we talk about the local preference. Not all of them offer it, but the one that do. So this is a city of Miami, for example. So, when you go to their website, the good thing is it tells you exactly, register as a city vendor, the steps to do. And if you're confused and need assistance, this is what we do. At least part of the services that I offer is facilitate the clients and walk them, through these vendor registrations, because a lot of times there are certain corporate documents that are required. Like, for example, I'm working with this guy that's been in business over 3 years. He doesn't have a local business tax receipt. Now, not only do you need a local business tax receipt for the county, whether you're in Miami-Dade, Broward, or West Palm, you have to get all these municipalities, they require their own local business tax receipt. When you're ready to register with them, that's when they ask for it. So it's super important. So that's what I do with my clients. The first thing, make sure that you have all your paperwork in order so you can take advantage of these things. You're already in the thing, you're paying your annual report every year, and you're not gonna have a local business tax receipt. And let me tell you, I have seen some of them companies where they go back and penalize you for the previous years. So that's super important. If anybody does not have their local business tax receipt, Google it or book something with me, and then you'll get it right away. So these are the examples of the projects. They'll tell you what the title is. Me, what I usually like to do, I like to look at the end dates. You know, if it's something that's due in 2 days, probably not, but you know, anything. And so now, for example, I don't know if I can make this a little bigger. You see this that says like pre-qualified. So that means if you're not in that pool of vendors, you're not gonna be able to apply for this project. So not only do you register as a vendor, we also look at what commodities that you offer, and that especially go with the local municipalities and the school boards, and then see if they have any pre-qualified pools that you can be part of. And you know, so that's mean only people that's part of that pool or you know, or invited to, you know, bid on this project. So oh, I know, oh my God, it's 1 o'clock. Let me see what else we have. It's still City of Miami, you know, what they look like. Again, the government has to tell you exactly what they want. And please follow it to the things. Don't go in and guesstimate the government. Don't go in and put all the graphics that's not necessary. Sometimes they give you the font. Sometimes they give you the size, all of these things, right? So here, this is for Miami-Dade for construction, right? We're not gonna, you know, because my time is up. So again, that's a solicitation. So MCC 7360 is a special program that the airport has that you can be part of it and be pre-qualified as a construction contractor under them, and then the work rotates. Because I was at the airport for many years, so I'm familiar with the MCC programs.
One
So,
thing here real quick, Bertha, I've got to run.
okay.
But Miami-Dade County also has pre-authorized vendor pools that
Yeah.
people want to check out. I don't know if you're going to cover that later here.
No, I think we're kind of done. I have to
Yeah.
kind
So
of
check out the authorized vendor pools. Those are like GSA schedules in the federal government. They're pre-authorized, and they'll only send those opportunities to people in those vendor pools.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be a local vendor, you get those additional 10% benefit. I've got to run.
Okay, thank you. But they're gonna get the slide. I'm so sorry I'm keeping you all a little late. I'm just gonna go through these slides real quick. And you know, so state of Florida contracting, we talked about that. I understand, Louis, so I'll call you if I need any help. And this is where you go for the vendor registration, my Florida marketplace, and also the certification. So SAM.gov, that's where you go and get your case number. They used to use the DUNS number. Now they're using the unique entity ID number for anything you do with SAM. So now once you completed your SAM, you're gonna get a case number. It's a free registration that I think it's every year or every 2 years. So this one, business development, like, you know, you have to push your business and let people know what you do. You know, prepare. I'm sorry, I'm rushing through because I didn't realize the time. You know, as for previous awarded contracts, we talked about that. Take proposal and cost estimated classes, because you have to master this so you can understand. It's always good to have an RFP matrix so you can track and forecast work that you want to go after. You know, that's what, you know, again, the capability statement is when you're able to have certification and past performance. You know, it's like a one-page resume of your company, like you have a one-page owner's resume. Always have an elevator pitch and your business cards. Again, the capability statement, like I just said, is a resume of your business. I swear I didn't see the slide before. You know, and that shows, you know, what you do. Still, you know, your services code, your certification, and what have you. Also, we even have some links on how to write one. So that's even good. I haven't even gone to these links. I can share with clients. So your elevator pitch, you know, this is not the class for it. So that's always good to have, because you have to be able to help me understand what you do, because we're meeting for the first time, right? Who you are, what you specialize in, what you do. Why do you think you're the best at what you do, and what have you? And always talk like you're talking to a friend or family member that you like. And choose the right event, because again, that's your time, that's your commodity. Your As a business owner, your time is your commodity. So trade shows, that's a lot. Trade shows, we can always go. Trade shows continue. I want to at least see if there's any question that I can address real quick. Again, you don't get a chance for a second impression. So whenever you're able to get that spot, you just, capture it, right? It always check for typos on your email and your website, because that just look very good. And I know that a lot of people still using Yahoo and Gmail accounts. That, at one point they said the government was gonna start rejecting them, but they're not. So it is what it is. And these are additional resources that you guys can go to, and they're really, really good. So any question and answers, we could do that. Let me go to the link and see if there was any question today. Okay, this is the link for Alexis put in. Does anybody have any questions at all? And again, I apologize for running over.
Yes, we have one question from Judith. She wants to know how to schedule to meet with you in Lewis. So Judith, you would use the SBDC consultant link first and fill that out. If you are already a consultant, you can send me, if you are already registered with the SBDC, you can send me an email directly and we'll go through the process to get you connected for those resources. So I'm going to send you both links here.
And then one more thing, Judith, if you have not registered yet and you're registering, put government contracting, so they'll be directing your request to myself and most likely myself on the SBDC. And once we get you to a certain level, then maybe Lois.
Okay, and so Judith, you should be seeing that response as well. And again, these slides will all be available to you all, as well as the recording via YouTube for you to review, go over. If you have any questions, the contact information for myself, Meritha, and Luis will also be included via the email that you will receive at the end of this presentation. Yes, yes, Ricardo, that is correct. Once you registered, then you should have received a reply email. That is the proper procedure. I am going to also put my email in the chat. So if anything else needs to be moved along, I can assist.
And please understand that once you register, the management team have to do their magic. And then once they assign it to me, that's when you'll hear from me.
Correct.
Because I won't be able to do
Correct.
anything until I get it from Jesus or Cindy.
Correct. Correct. So, and just in the interest of time, if there aren't any more questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. I thank you all for participating. If you have any questions, here's the contact number for the Florida Apex Accelerator, as well as the website sbdc.fiu.edu/Apex, as well as the consulting website that you have. If you want to know more about upcoming events, or just want to know more about what we do here at the SBDC, please follow us on social media. We are on all of the major social media platforms. Here are our handles. They will also be included in the email that will go out at the ending of this webinar. So I thank you all again very much for your time and your patience. Please make sure if you're available that you attend tomorrow's webinar as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you all tomorrow. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.